what they want. And their prayer right here, I mean their complaint right here is so crazy because they said, wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? So up to that point, they're just thinking, oh man, I wish I was back in Egypt. But they were slaves in Egypt. So they're complaining to God in this time. But there are two important people in this story that we're going to take a look at, okay? So I want to have a volunteer to read um, chapter 14, verse 6 to 9. Can somebody read chapter 14, 6 to 9?
I can read it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to read it in Hakka, okay?
Mhm.
Nun Fapa Joshua led Jephunneh Fapa Caleb Ram Ahungya Thaitu Na Laki Atelve Min Hani Khan Anpuan Anthei Israel Mibu Pi Sinakhan Niyo Mai Oka Kanhung Tol Mi Ramju Ramtha Shingshan Asikau Boipa Chu Kanchung Alom Chun Hiram Chung Chun akan bukti lai akan pek lai chok nuk le koi titi in aluang miram asikau boipa chu adau bel do so la u chun chu rammi chu ti na la u zaitin tia kan cha a rol pe an sikau chu anni an him nak chu an sining thial asi chang boipa chu kan ma he pe a chu ti na la u tia akan ti.
Thank you for reading that. So we've got two different sides, right? We've got the Israelites that are complaining, and then who do we have? We have Caleb and Joshua that we're talking about, right? At this point right here in the story that we just read, we know that the rest of the people are complaining. Imagine thousands and thousands of people complaining, and only two people are brave enough to say, we went through it, we saw it, and we know God's going to take us through. They had so much faith and they completely trusted that God was going to take them. Sometimes we think, oh, of course they can trust God. They've gone through so much that he took them out of from Egypt and they saw so many things. Of course they can have faith. But even for us, right? Sometimes we have experienced in our lives where God takes us out of many difficult situations, but it's hard for us to trust in the future that he will guide us. But we can see the faith that they hold in here. And then if we just closely look at verse 10, right after what Munham just read, we read that people hated them. Their own people, the people that they probably thought were family and friends, they were talking about stoning them. That's crazy to think about, right? Like the Israelites that they are with, the people that they worship God together with, are against them because they're not seeing eye to eye. So I want you to keep that in your mind, okay? The main reason is because Caleb and Joshua chose to believe in God despite what the rest of the group is saying, what the rest of the crowd is saying, the rest of what everybody else is thinking. So who doesn't use social media right now? I think all of us use social media, right? Some of us probably even already have Threads, which is like the new Twitter from Instagram. Guilty. I got one, but I might delete it because I don't see the use of it. But we are so saturated with so many things. And if we look at our society today, there's so much pressure on us, right? There's so many things. We have to look a certain way, we have to dress a certain way, we have to speak a certain way to be like everybody else that we hang out with. And I think, especially for a lot of you that are still in school, it's easy to say, you know what, for me to feel like I belong to this, I have to do exactly what they do. I was a teenager once. I went through the exact same thing as well. So today I want us to just simplify everything and think, okay, why do I feel the need to be like everybody else around me? Why do I feel like I need to follow society's trends? And I want you to keep in mind Joshua and Caleb's issue of them going against the rest of the people, but they were so sure in their faith, right? So I want us to see right now this. Who knows what a starter pack is? Have you guys heard of what starter packs are? Yes, right? Kind of like a starter pack of so and so. So this is what they made up, saying this is the starter pack of a girl who is always late to church. You got those Gucci bags, Starbucks in their hands. They've got their leather backpacks. Their leather bags. They're all dressed up. Got food. They even wrote too much makeup. You got a starter pack of Christian like missionaries, the typical Christian that's supposed to look like, right? There's a lot of things that we can see in here. This one says Christian homeschooler starter pack. I don't know if any of you are homeschooled, but you've got a certain way that you expect people to dress. Lydia and Melody, I think they're cracking up in the back. I wish I could hear them laugh in person. You've got Chronicles of Narnia. I love Narnia. I don't know why Narnia is in the starter pack for homeschoolers because I love that movie. You've got the hip youth pastor starter pack. They're supposed to have long hair, tie it back. They've got a cross tattoo. Like you can see this, right? They're engaged at 19. A lot of them are. We got the Christian college starter pack. I don't know if any of you go to Christian colleges, but a lot of them are sandals. I believe in this starter pack 100%. I think a lot of my friends that I went to school with, I went to Christian university too. You got the hammock, that's in as well. So today, so I just showed you the starter packs, and I wanted to talk briefly about the idea of what we think we are supposed to look like if we go against the rest of the world, right? I think sometimes when you hear pastors or people tell you in church, oh, don't be like the rest of the world. Don't follow everything they say. Don't do this, don't do that. In our head, it's so easy to picture us looking a certain way, right? Looking like we always have to wear knee, and that's it. You can't wear pants, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's how we picture the opposite of it. But that's not really what the Bible is saying when we are called to be different. It's in the action and it's in the faith. It's in our faith that we are being called to be different. So I want us to read two texts right now. We're going to go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 10. So if we can turn to Matthew chapter 5, verse 10. If I can have another volunteer read this, that would be great. Matthew chapter 5, verse 10 to, let's see. We're going to read verse 10 to 16. It's a little bit long, so if anyone can volunteer. Lighthold Zongin, it's okay. We can do Lighthold too. Matthew 5, 10 to 16. Do I need to call up people? I think Salome's ready, yeah? She's got her Bible open. So let's read from Matthew 5. Yeah, chapter 5, verse 10 to 16.
Okay, I read in line. Patiani tua u ati mi tua rong a remnak ing mi chu lunglom mi nan vasita vansung panak chu nan mata se.
Keep reading up to verse 16.
16, okay. Nan mi chu kazul tu nan si rong a mi ni ani ni so na I ani rem na I li ani pun pun in ani pu na tika nan sa a lunglom ok vasida nan lung ilom ulo nan tanom ko u say sa tia van chung ko alak song tampi chiap yak nan sikaw chuban tuk chun pe nan han I arakumi prophet na kha an rakshan na chu tia ti nani chu valai chite nan si siman selo chite kha al nak chu alowa chun satan da altar ko asi than ti lai santlai na kha angei ti lo cha a hlon ok le lam ok men sikaw chang nani chu valai cheu nak nan si tang chunga antlak mi khwa chu zaiman a pen ko lo homani mai far anvantiga ko khulbal lo mai vanak tu a khan anchia ton I in chung I u mi vel te kha acheu di na chuban tuk in nani nan cheu nak song chu mi mai a acheu ko si chuti chu thio tha nan to mi kha an mu na lai I van chung ko a u mi an pa kha an thang that na lai.
Thank you. Thank you for reading. This is, I think, a verse or a text that I think a lot of us are familiar with, right? We've heard it read in sermons, in churches a lot. But I just want you to simply think about that. Okay, God is giving us Jesus. This text right here is Jesus directly telling us. And he says, we are the light of the world. So when we are being called to be different from this world, we aren't called to be so different that people are going to look at us in a certain way, but we are called to be different, rather to be a light to people. So I want to tell you guys today that we're not called to look weird or act weird, right? Like quote unquote, be so different that you start becoming weird as a person. But we are called to rise above the norm, rise above the normal that we think everybody else is supposed to live, but live a life that glorifies Jesus at the most, right? Sometimes other people around us may not like it. They may not understand why we choose to do certain things as Christians. But when we are focused in on the reason why we do it, which is Jesus, we will be different, right? So I want to talk to you about this idea of a fish swimming against the current. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Have you guys ever seen fish like swimming? In a river, they're just simply swimming in like cool water, right? When there's no current. But have you seen like waterfalls? You would be surprised to know that fish, a lot of species, I mean, a lot of breeds of them, they actually swim against. And you're thinking, how does that even make sense? If the water is going the direction, this down direction, why are they just not swimming down? They're actually swimming against the current. So there's a term for this, and it's called rheotexis. I don't think many of us are familiar with it. It's very interesting to read up if you have time. So if you really think about it, and you think rheotexis, how does that make any sense, right? And why is Ubeka telling us about this? This is what us as Christians, especially today, we need to be, right? Maybe you go to school and your friends are cursing and they're saying bad words, and you think, oh, that's the cool way to be. I gotta curse just like them so I can be cool. Well, you don't have to. You don't have to be just like them to be accepted, right? God is calling us to be different. It's not really about all the stuff that we saw in the starter pack. That's just what we think it's supposed to look like as well, right? But we're calling to be different. There is a quote I read that I really like, and it says, live fish, which means fish that are alive. Live fish always swim against the current. Only dead fish goes with the flow. So if you're simply going along with the rest of the world and with the rest of what your friends are doing, especially non-believers and non-Christians, if you are just going along with the rest of what they're doing, well, we have to ask ourselves, right? Do I have Jesus in my life? Am I really a Christian if I'm just following along with what the rest of the world is doing? So I think that quote is so important because it's reminding us that actually it is normal that fish do it too for survival and for many purposes. They actually swim up against the current. So my invitation tonight to all of you is to learn to swim against that current. It's not going to be easy for a lot of us. Personally, I grew up in a lot of places. I was born and raised in Burma, but I left when I was 12, and then we moved to the Philippines, and then later we came here to the States. So I've been in 3 different countries. I grew up with a lot of different people and culture. And for sure, America, I would say, is the most liberal when it comes to ideas and things. But it didn't matter whether I went to school in a very far away place from my parents. I knew the reason why I was a Christian. And I think that's the invitation that I want to put out to each of you tonight. Why do you go to church? Why are you a Christian? Is it because your parents are forcing you to? Well, if that's the reason, then you are simply just a dead fish that's flowing with the rest of the crowd, right? So I want to encourage you. I want to invite you. I want to ask yourself and say, okay, from tonight on, I want to swim against the current. I don't want to just be like everybody else, but I'm called to be different. I'm called to do God's purpose. Now, I want to ask you, do any of you, or can any of you give me at least one Bible character, one person in the Bible that you think swam against the current, or that was called to be different and they swam against the current?
Noah.
Noah, absolutely, right? Literally everybody but his like close-knit family was against him, and they even thought he was crazy. Good. One more. Can anybody give me one more character or one more person? There's a lot. Maybe I'm putting you on the spot and it's hard to think. What about right before we studied Numbers, right? In the story, who took them out of Egypt? Who took the Israelites out of Egypt? Or who helped, I guess. God did, but Moses as well, right? We've got Moses. There's so many that we can think about. There's Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. When the rest, when you study the Bible, really, Daniel, when he was taken in captivity into Babylon, he was actually a teenager as well. So he was younger than a lot of us. He may be the same age as some of us. He was just a teenager, but even as a teenager, he already knew the reason why God was important to him. He stood firm. So our age cannot be an excuse to flow along with everybody else, right? So tonight, I want to leave you with one starter pack, okay? Just this one starter pack that I want you to keep in your mind. You're thinking, oh no, how many pictures I'm going to see on this screen? You don't have to worry about it. There's not going to be that many to memorize, okay? This is the one starter pack that I want to leave with you because you are called to be different. And that starter pack is Jesus. Jesus is filled with everything that we need in this world to look upon, right? And you're thinking, oh, because that's so cliche. I've heard that 1,000 times that I have to be like Jesus. But no, really, like Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer to all of this. Jesus is the answer for us to swim against that current. So anytime you think, oh, I'm not cool enough like the rest of the world, it doesn't matter. Jesus himself was mocked when he came here, right? But Jesus is calling us to be like him. So anytime you have this struggle of knowing your identity and why you are being called in this earth to be different, we have to remember that Jesus came for us and he's preparing an even better place for us. We are just travelers. We are here just for a little longer, right? We're not going to be here for that long anymore. He's going to come back. He's going to take us to our home that he's preparing. So in the meantime, despite the struggles and how hard it may be to feel like you don't fit in, like you're not made for this world, just remember to look and think, oh, my starter pack is Jesus. So what would Jesus do in this case? If someone was mean to me, how do I forgive them? How did Jesus forgive other people? How did Jesus treat people that the rest of the world think are sinners? Did he ignore them? No, never. He was friends to everybody else that we may not even want to be friends with, right? So Jesus is the answer to all of this. So your starter pack tonight is Jesus. So that's what I want you to remember tonight. If you forget everything else that I've said in the beginning and you don't even remember the verses and what chapters we read, just remember my starter pack is Jesus. He's where you can start off and you can learn so much about him in the Bible. And for those of us that may be struggling to think, oh, Becca, I don't know how to start studying the Bible. I don't even know how I can learn about Jesus. Something that really helped me is studying the Gospels, which is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because they were, Dr. Luke wasn't part of his disciples, but the rest of the other three people are. But his account was still very close to the others. So when you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it's the gospel that or the story of Jesus. So you can imagine yourself being in the place, right? Some of you may be auditory. So my advice, maybe if you're auditory, you can play the audio of the Bible and you can imagine yourself. So, okay, let's all imagine the story of Jesus feeding 5,000, right? 5,000 people. You're among the people. You're there. You're smelling the fish. You're smelling the bread. Like this is an interactive story that you can be a part of. So make it interesting, make it fitting, and know that Jesus was real and Jesus was here. Okay, so Jesus is our starter pack. So as we close off tonight, I want us to go to 2 Bible verses and then we're going to close. So the first verse I want us to read is in Romans chapter 8, verse 29. Romans chapter 8, verse 29. And if someone can get ready to read that one, and then another verse, if someone else can read Romans chapter 12, verses 1 to 2, or 1 and 2. Okay. So Romans chapter 8, verse 29, and Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2.
Sharing. Rom Period. Kurnan quantity. Okay. Planning sharing.
Okay.
Yanin ashel jami polzu afale mui mel geng dinga atya ja hai juti jun una tampi lak afapa ju upabik asiding tia ase jurong pathian I atya dan jami polzu kal alaw akaw chule ako mi polzu tiam achauter I asun loinak call ahoy a home high ase.
Okay. Aman lo mi lo sim bang kati. Sorry. No, pwelo kay masan ni ka sim ding mi man lo bang. 28 son kan dak sia sak pay mo.
Oh, 28 in there. Okay.
28 long khang ako.
Okay. Ziang tin kim a hin patien chun ama adu to tu le ama I tum ta mi vek in ako mi rang a chun an that nak a na atuan si ti kan the. Kama.
Okay, thank you. Then idang pakadli ka Romans 12, 1 and 2 and chat mo. Okay.
Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will.
Thank you, Kalon. So that's a verse that I want to leave with you tonight, okay? Romans 12, 1 to 2, and Romans 8, 28, especially Romans 12, verse 2. It says, don't conform to the world, which means don't be like the rest of the world, right? So tonight, I want to tell you that if you feel like you don't fit in, right? Midang vek hindi to or like I don't have that much money, or all of these issues that we have. Maybe you feel like you're not made for this world sometimes. You feel like you don't belong. Well, the reality is this is not our world, and we weren't made to be here from the beginning, right? Sin unfortunately corrupted this place. So when you feel at times that you don't fit in, just remember that your starter pack is Jesus. You can always go back to it. God's forgiveness isn't one where we have to go and grab it, right? He gives us forgiveness and he gives us his love, and we're the ones that we can go up to him anytime when we need to talk to him. So tonight, I want us to remember that we are called to be different from the rest of the world. We are called to swim against the current, and that is going to look different for all of us because we all have different lives and we all have different struggles. But the most important thing is that despite the differences that we may have, we have the same Jesus, right? The same Jesus that came to this earth and dealt with all sorts of different people and his disciples. If you guys think of all the disciples, they came with different personalities, they came with different jobs, they came with different background, they came with different mindset on who Jesus even was. But Jesus spoke to them exactly where they needed to be. And that is what we are being told today, right? We are being called to be different, but different not in the way that the world's going to think that we're weird, but different in the way that Jesus wants us to be, to not be like the rest of the world, but to go after our starter pack, which is Jesus. So I hope that you learned something from this. And more than anything, like I said, if you forget everything else, just remember that your starter pack is Jesus, and you can always go back to him when you need a friend to talk to, right? And that is what prayer really is. So I want you guys to think about this question. In what ways are you gonna be able to play out this calling that Jesus places in your life, right? In what ways should people see Jesus in you as a Christian? So the question is always, I see Jesus in this person, in the way that they do this or the way they behave this way. It's not all about the way we dress. It's not all about the way we look, but it's mostly about how we represent ourselves to other people. And that's how we are being called to be different. Okay. I want to have a quick prayer, and then Utang can lead us back into the way he wants the program to be. If anybody has a prayer request, I actually just want to open up the floor, and you can message me privately if you would like that. I necessarily won't have to pray with your name, but it's just if you have a prayer request, you can go ahead and message me in the box. I wish I could speak in like full on live. I hope, hopefully, maybe in the future I can. It would be a good practice place for me too. But tonight has been really good. I'm so grateful to have met all of you through this. And maybe if you come to Maryland, hopefully I see some of you guys, or if I get to come to New York and we can meet each other in person, that would be great. And maybe some of you, we can beat each other in basketball. We'll see. I can shoot some hoops,